Hi guys, so we're getting through this play. This is the McBinge screencast for Act 4, Scene 1. And we are diving back into the play after the tumultuous events of Act 3, where Macbeth kills Banquo. He's haunted by the ghost of the friend he's just murdered. It kind of sends him over the edge psychologically and emotionally, and he ends with that powerful speech where he says, "Blood will have blood, and I am so steeped so far in blood that I cannot come back. That I'm going to fully embrace kind of evil now." And people are starting to notice this in Scotland. Um, Act 4 opens as a return to the witches. Macbeth said at the end of Act 3 that he was going to see the witches now because he was determined to find out how he could solidify his reign by the worst means, he says. So he's fully embracing his position as someone in the position of evil here. Again, it opens with thunder to herald the entrance of the witches. It's important to note the recurrence of that stage direction specifically every time the witches come up. It would be an important thing to talk about in an exam or in an essay, the way that stage direction is used and the way that thunder and lightning are used in order to herald the arrival of the witches. Now, this scene, the image in this scene, and some of the lines in this scene are some of the most famous lines from the play. They have transcended past Shakespeare. And one of them is the three witches and the fact that they are surrounding a boiling cauldron. And that image of witches surrounding a cauldron and putting things into a cauldron and all the things that they put in. A lot of those tropes and a lot of those conventions that you'll see every time you see witches in literally anything from Harry Potter to, you know, anything else, they come from this play. They originate from this play and this depiction of witches. So we have them there, and we've got thrice the brinded cat hath mewed, thrice and once the hedge pig whined. Note the use of threes when it comes to the witches. They're saying these things happen 3 times. There are 3 witches. Every time the witches talk, they do things in threes. There were 3 prophecies at the beginning. We're about to have 3 more prophecies in this scene. Okay, that use of this kind of this 3, that triumvirate that the witches are, very much defines their character. It's like they're 3 points to some kind of unholy triangle, and everything they do has to come in threes, and it kind of gives the witches a sense of cohesiveness, and it also makes them kind of this one evil spirit that's just represented in the different witches. So the witches hang out for a little bit, and they hold on. Let me get to exactly the right bit in my big copy of Macbeth. Yeah, the witches hang out for a little bit, and they're brewing up crazy evil stuff in their cauldron. And Shakespeare kind of has fun with this a little bit. You've got this classic line: "Double, double, toil and trouble, fire burn and cauldron bubble," which is a lovely little flow to it, and you've probably heard in different things in different media since, but that line originally comes from Shakespeare. Yeah, Shakespeare has a lot of fun with using kind of the most disgusting things he can think of to put in this cauldron, right? We've got wool of bat and tongue of dog, adder's fork and blindworm's sting, lizard's leg and owlet's wing. Note that from the very beginning, and this is actually important, whenever the witches are about, there's a lot of animal imagery. They deal with kind of animals. The beginning, they're talking about cats and hedge pigs, and now they're talking about all other types of animals that they're taking and they're chopping up and they're throwing into the pot. And this kind of has 2 potential meanings here. That kind of bestial imagery is being very much used to describe the witches' kind of evil and their devilry and all that sorts of things, and the way that they're removed from man, that they're not human, right? They deal in a more animalistic world. But also the way that the witches are chopping up animals and throwing them into a cauldron suggests something really unnatural, something almost anti-nature, right? They're taking these natural things like frogs and dogs and worms, and they're chopping them up and they're destroying them and they're boiling them down in order to make their evil. And I think it tells you a lot about who these witches are and how they're presented as being these unnatural things that are against nature and that destroy nature. And that's a theme, as we've seen, that runs through the play. And as the witches go on, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it gets darker and darker. And this is kind of Shakespeare really wanting to express the dark side of this all. Finger of a birth strangled babe. So a baby that was strangled at birth, their finger goes into the cauldron, and all sorts of other weird and unnatural and horrible things, really building up that evil atmosphere that is happening. Then Hecate comes in as well, who we've seen previously. If these three witches are like an evil triangle, she's like the peak of the pyramid on top, and telling them that they're doing a great job, and they all sing about black spirits, and wonderful. And then you get the arrival of Macbeth. One thing to say about Hecate when she arrives, she says, "Oh, well done, I commend your pains, and everyone shall share in the gains." So there's something that they're gaining here. There's something the witches and Hecate and these workers of evil are gaining here by all the work they're doing. What is it? It's not entirely clear. Perhaps it's just chaos. Perhaps it's just their enjoyment at seeing chaos in Scotland, and that's what they've managed to do through Macbeth. Just before Macbeth appears, the second witch says another iconic line: "Something wicked this way comes." And that's how they're describing Macbeth. Note that they immediately describe him as wicked, whereas at the very beginning of the play, that was not his description. So now he is wicked, but not only is he wicked, he's something wicked. He's not someone wicked, he's something wicked. And after all that kind of bestial animal imagery that we've had so far, there's an implication here that Macbeth is more like one of them than he is like a human at this point, right? They kind of welcome him in. And Macbeth seems to act in almost exactly the same way, right? He opens with a greeting. "How now, you secret black and midnight hags?" It's much more kind of open and less reticent, like he was the last time he saw the witches, where he was really unsure about what was going on. "What is it that you do?" And they all say, "A deed without a name," because of course their deeds are so evil that they cannot be named. And that also makes you think of, so the second witch doesn't say Macbeth comes. The second witch says something wicked this way comes, suggesting perhaps that Macbeth too is so evil that he cannot be named. So there are links all between the different pieces of language in this section. Now Macbeth is here to find out answers, and I want to look at this little bit here, this little section, and think about what it tells you about Macbeth's characterization. So there's a couple of things. If you compare it with Act 1, Scene 2, right at the beginning, when they, or is it Act 1, Scene 3, rather, right at the beginning, where they first meet the witches, and both Macbeth and Banquo are quite reticent and asking lots of questions and things like that. Now Macbeth is just like, "Right, I conjure you by that which you profess, however you come to know it, answer me." His use of kind of those really clear imperative statements, the order that he gives, shows that he is not even slightly concerned about the possible evil that might happen to him at this point. He just wants to know what's going on, and he wants more prophecies because he feels that's going to give him security. And we know at this point he's panicking about security, about losing his realm, about losing his dynasty, all of this sort of thing. Note this little section here. "Though the bladed corn be lodged in trees blown down, though castles topple on their warders' heads, though palaces and pyramids do slope their heads to their foundations, though the treasure of nature's Germans tumble all together even till destruction sicken, answer me to what I ask you." So we've got this use of repetition here. We've got this use of though happening to start the sentences. And that repetitive sentence structure does two things. One, the use of the word though shows that Macbeth is aware of what their evil deeds is doing to Scotland. He knows that there are trees blown down. He knows that castles are toppling on people's heads. He knows, and you can see these as metaphorical or in some cases literal. Some of the crazy, unnatural stuff that's been happening in the play so far seems to suggest that. But he knows that whatever these witches tell him means bad stuff happens to Scotland and bad stuff happens to nature, right? The treasure of nature's Germans tumble all together till even till destruction sicken. So he knows that it's not good for the world. The key is he doesn't care anymore. And that really comes out in this speech. Even though all of this bad stuff might happen, I don't care. Answer my questions. Whatever happens, because he doesn't care about Scotland anymore, he only cares about himself. And that is his kind of fundamental change in his decision. And the repetition of the though really highlights that. It really drives it home. And you can see just in a lot of Macbeth's language, like, look at this point where the first witch, so this is another moment if we get into kind of old Elizabethan era witchcraft, right? And the witches kind of seducing Macbeth over. The first witch says, "Say, if thou'dst rather hear it from our mouths or from our masters." Now, this is a big moment because the witches are kind of like half human, half in hell with devils and all of those sorts of things. But this witch is kind of seducing with like, would you like to speak to the big bosses, the real devils involved here? Macbeth, not concerned anymore. Call him. Let me see him. Right? He's fully embracing this darkness now. He's fully embracing that's part. He's confident around evil. Whereas before he was quite reticent, now he's completely confident around evil, and just that language in the same way. So we get a bunch of new prophecies through apparitions. We get the first apparition saying, "Macbeth, Macbeth, Macbeth, beware Macduff, beware the Thane of Fife." That's who Macduff is, the Thane of Fife. Dismiss me enough. So really brief prophecies that are happening here. And it's interesting that Macbeth is trying to ask more. He says, "Whatever thou art, for thy good wish and thanks," blah, blah, blah. Tries to ask for them back. And the first witch says, "He will not be commanded." So Macbeth, for all the power that he has gained in this mortal world, he has no power to tell these apparitions to come back and to answer him or anything like that. He has no power there. We get the second prophecy. "Be bloody, bold, and resolute. Laugh to scorn the power of man, for none of women born shall harm Macbeth." So that's the second one. No one who is born of a woman can harm Macbeth. And Macbeth's pretty happy about that. "Then live, Macduff. What need I fear of thee?" Because he takes that to mean no one can kill me, no one can harm me. That's great. Why do I need to be scared of you? But that doesn't last very long. That's kind of a joke question, because he immediately says, "But yet I'll make assurance double sure and take a bond of fate. Thou shalt not live." Look how quickly that happens. That also tells you a lot about Macbeth's state of mind here. When Macbeth was given the prophecy back in Act 1, Scene 3, he spent the rest of the act thinking, worrying, oh, should I do it? Should I not do it? These witches, what do they mean? Do they want to cause harm? Oh, but are they telling the truth? Blah, 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 blah. Until he eventually gets around to killing Duncan, and he's plagued with grief. Even Banquo, it takes him some time to kind of work himself up there, and even then the banquet that Banquo was at shows the extent of his grief and madness. Here, now, witch pops up, or apparition pops up, beware Macduff. Macbeth, 2 seconds later, I'm going to kill him. He's dead. Straight away. It just goes to show how far Macbeth has kind of turned that corner. And then we get the third apparition that says, "Macbeth shall never be vanquished until great Birnam Wood to high Dunsinane Hill shall come against him." So Dunsinane is the name of the castle, which is up on a hill, the castle where Macbeth would be at, and Birnam Wood, now that he's king, he would be at Dunsinane Castle, and Birnam Wood is the forest that is near Dunsinane Castle, and it's a whole forest, it's just Birnam Wood, right? And this apparition is saying, until the wood literally gets up and moves to Dunsinane Castle, which is impossible, Macbeth will never be vanquished. So Macbeth takes that to mean never going to happen, right? He even says, that will never be. Who can impress the forest? Bid the tree to unfix his earthbound root. So he's fine. And then he comes to his big question. The big question that really has been plaguing his mind. He ends with saying, blah, 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 blah. Yet my heart throbs to know one thing. Tell me, if your art can tell so much, shall Banquo's issue ever reign in this kingdom? So is Banquo's kids ever going to be the heirs to the throne? This is the one thing that's really playing on his mind. He's kind of obsessing over it. He pushes and he pushes and he pushes, and eventually he sees this line of kings, the last with a glass in his hand, and the ghost of Banquo following them. And there's the implication there that this line of kings has come from Banquo, right? So after being told by the witches, you shall never be vanquished for all these reasons, now he's being shown this line of 8 kings that seems that Banquo is the father of this line of kings, and he is understandably not happy about this. But the witches don't really care, and they think that it's all lovely and amazing and exciting. But he ends in a bad mood, right? And we start to see this. I talked about it in the last screencast. We start to see his temper coming out of Macbeth. He ends in a bad mood where he says, "Where are they gone? Let this pernicious hour stand I accursed in the calendar. Come in, without there!" And shouts for Lennox. And we can start to see what the consequences of his bad mood are. So we see blah, 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 blah. Lennox tells Macbeth here, "'Tis 2 or 3, my lord, that bring you word that Macduff is fled to England." So we get some dramatic tension here for the plot, right? He's just been told that to fear Macduff, and now, in the end of the same scene, he's been told that Macduff has fled to England from Scotland. And so Macbeth decides that it's time to act. And he says here, "From this moment, the very firstlings of my heart shall be the very firstlings of my hand." In other words, I am going to act on every impulse. I'm not going to double think anything, right? Think about how that contrasts with Act 1, Scene 4, I think, when he finds out that Malcolm is going to be the Duke of Cumberland and going to take the throne, where he says, "The eye wink at the hand. I don't want to see what my hand is doing. I don't want to think about it, blah, blah, blah." Now, he's saying, as soon as it comes into my brain, I'm going to do it. He's not scared about hiding himself from his actions anymore. He's going to be very, very impulsive, I suppose. And how does that impulse work? He says, "The castle of Macduff I will surprise, seize upon Fife, give to the edge of the sword his wife, his babes, and all unfortunate souls that trace him in this line." So this is where Macbeth is at now. He's found out Macduff has fled to England. He's angry at that whole Banquo thing at the end of the Witches. He's got that fear Macduff line in his mind. So he's like, we're going to go to Macduff's castle in Fife and we're going to kill everyone. I'm going to kill his wife. I'm going to kill his kids. I'm going to kill his servants. I'm going to kill anyone who happens to find themselves in that castle. That's how I'm going to deal with this situation. So we start to get a real insight of what sort of king, what sort of tyrant Macbeth really is. Note that he does use the words that trace him in his line here. And we see that even with Macduff, with everybody, Macbeth has this growing obsession with dynasty. It torments him. the idea that yes, he's king, but other people should be king after him. He wants everything, right? His ambition is not able to stop, and so when they say fear Macduff, he's like, I'm not just gonna kill. Well, I can't kill Macduff because he's fled to England, but I'm gonna kill his whole family and I'm gonna kill all his kids. I'm gonna end his line right now. And that's Act 4, Scene 1. It's a dark scene, and it really goes to show the extent to which Macbeth has descended into just being a complete ruthless mass murderer who fully embraces evil and witchery and devilry to get whatever he wants. This is Macbeth at his kind of darkest moments, I think. And it's interesting seeing all the conflict that he's had to get up until this point.